Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order the April administrative meeting of the Plan Commission. Tammy, would you call the roll to get us started?
Let's see. We have all right, Dave Bush.
Here.
David Henry, not here. Edward Olney.
Here.
Jeff Morris.
Here.
Margaret Clements. Here. Julie Thomas. Here. Lee Field.
Here.
Scott Ferris.
Here.
And Sean Enright Randolph is absent. So we have 7 people. That is an in-person quorum.
Thank you, Tammy. So under administrative business, the first item is the CDO prioritization list. So Tammy, do you have any updates on that this month?
I don't really. I think some of the things are embedded in the packet for more along the lines of some track changes identified by staff. And you're going to see also a little bit of a landscape chapter amendment. And we're working on impervious cover. So we haven't changed anything in here yet, but you'll be introduced to it tonight. So, all right.
Sounds good. The second item under administrative business is the CDO map error at 3800 West Constitution Ave.
Right. Somehow we had in 2022 rezoned a Cook property on Liberty Drive, or no, Constitution Drive out of a PUD and had made it light industrial. That was even mine. And someone had called in for an appraisal or something, and we realized it was an error in map. It just didn't get switched or something with the CDO. So we're just gonna take that, I think, we'll take it to you guys, I think, next, just in a work session, get that amendment done. Okay.
Okay, thanks for the update on that, Tammy. So moving on to unfinished business, we have SIA-22-7, Holland Foods.
Yeah, there's the 2 of them together, so, and it's also SIA 22-9. You all heard this at the regular session last month, and I included in the packet kind of a summary from what was discussed. And since then, we have not heard a peep from the developer. I'll be checking back in with them, this next week to see if I need to update the packet or the report. But I have no updates on this one. Does anyone have any questions on how it feels?
I think I don't have any.
I just have a comment. And I brought this up at the last meeting. There are some things that can be approved by the Plan Commission, and some things that do not require the commissioner's approval. This is one of those things that is approved by the Plan Commission.
Correct.
It would be very helpful, particularly for some of us who don't understand at what levels yet, if you would put it right there in the beginning of the packet. Like you say, this goes to the commissioners for approval, or you can just say, this is for Plan Commission approval.
I can see
Like
that.
like a sentence, just a sentence.
There's really only like 2 things. It will be, well, yeah, I hear your point. Yeah, rezones, text amendments,
So
and the map amendment.
in the petition, you're saying at the beginning of the petition.
I don't care where it is, but it should just be right up front, just a sentence or half a sentence to say that's what.
Because there's a list in the petition about where things have gone and where they're going.
We do have a little box in our rules procedure that it might actually be in the CDO now. That kind of says where things end up.
But in petitions themselves, you often will see
I'm just saying,
where this has been, like if it's been to ordinance review. So you could say future,
Okay,
add it there, right?
sure.
On this chart, in the box, if you added, like authority there, and if it's Plan Commission, it could be Plan Commission. If it's commissioners, it can be
Yeah.
commissioners.
Final authority.
Yeah, final authority.
Just put it in the box. It's good.
I think it was pretty common in the past to have it in the first sentence where it either said approval or recommendation. I haven't seen it as much.
These are new reports. We didn't
Yeah,
ever do these really before, other than if it was a reduction.
And I think, Jeff, too, what you're thinking about too is I know with plat, all of our packets always have, because the plat, it's like a 50-50 on stuff that gets approved, that gets a motion of approval or motion of recommendation. And so even just having, add one more cell to your little spreadsheet to shape
Okay,
you know, where it just says it's just
it's a recommendation versus,
a final.
So what's obvious to you is not necessarily obvious to some of us.
okay.
So
Okay, any other questions for Tammy on Holland Fields? Okay, moving on to new business, we have amendments to the county development.
So this is a text amendment that we identified, working through impervious cover. The record show. Last month, we did at the Board of Zoning Appeals, several variances for impervious cover. This month, we have like another 7 of them ready to go. We are wanting to do text amendment to sort of change the standard. We've reached out to the drainage board, then we worked with the stormwater program manager, and Jackie and I put together a text amendment. And it looks a little bit like this. So in each residentially zoned 2-pager, other than HD, we did not use this for high density. It's already such a small lot. But on the second page of those 2-pagers, we have amended the subscript number 2. And it says, see chapter 813 for exceptions. And this is associated with both maximum impervious cover and maximum impervious cover for development within the critical watershed. So there are 2 standards. These each have a secondary subscript, and scrolling through all the pages where it's come up, getting to chapter 813. All right, so what we have is, this is the text that we're proposing. It is basically excluding driveways. It's on page 48 of their first packet. So this is something that you might want to read through. And we also have included one figure here to describe how a parking space would work, and also kind of another way of how we would be calculating impervious cover, everything like outlined in yellow, including this little circle drive, swimming pool, parking lot, or tennis court. Those all get counted. What doesn't get counted is the driveway to access the house. And then some of the details in here were like, we're not going to count driveways specifically if they're going through non-buildable areas, so right of way, setbacks, flagpole lots. If it's in an easement, like if you have an easement running through your property, we're not going to count that against you. Because it's not sustainable for staff to keep bringing all of these impervious variances. Most of them are I can't say most are getting approved yet, but we're not trying to not have variances for every single petition, like every single review. We do see that there might be structures or more compact development that could be encouraged. But the driveways on the report that we had for the ORC seemed to be a problem. So that's what this one is. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I don't understand the significance, so maybe I should. March 11th, 2014. What is the significance of that date?
That's when we had our last set of aerials that we can prove it. So that's where our aerials are.
So if somebody asked you that question,
I can look and see visually if you have an existing driveway. There might be a couple that we missed, and you could maybe petition that.
but is that why it's a magical date?
That's when our last aerials were run.
Okay.
I think our aerials might have gone through just in 2025 already this year. I don't have a published date.
I know I've been approving them.
I don't think the flyover has happened yet this year, or if it did, it happened like last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Because we were getting inquiries about the weather.
it feels like we've had aerials through every year. We've on contracts. Okay,
Yeah, so these were last year's aerials, basically, in 2024.
okay.
I actually mentioned if we should try to use 2025 and preemptively see if John Baton knows when those happen. but
I I see what you're saying.
We don't know what the quality ones are gonna be. One year, I remember we had terrible quality ones that weren't,
Right,
I don't want to,
right. They didn't.
I don't want to
radar and.
so we'll leave it at this.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And that's a good set. Okay.
Thank you, Jamie. So moving on to the second item, the urban sliding scale subdivision preliminary area utilities and street tree waiver.
So the urban subdivision, it's one lot here that's turning into two lots. They are requesting a utility waiver for this existing line. There was some robust discussion at the plat committee last week. It was just last Thursday. So this packet was published and then plat committee happened. So this report's going to get updated with the plat committee finding their recommendation. I think was a no recommendation. And then this one also ran into a street tree waiver on, yeah, so they're asking for a street tree waiver. I will tell you that both of the subdivisions that you're kind of getting introduced to tonight, were guinea pigs for our new CDO. And we did identify that we have, some text that we're needing to correct in street trees for subdivisions. And you'll see that here in just a little bit tonight. And this is what the plat looks like for the new lot. So. A lot of you were at that plat committee meeting. Gonna keep moving on. That's like, it's a bigger group now. We have like five.
So we can get a report on why they said no recommendation, just like we do with the RC or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, there will be a little paragraph in the staff report that discusses like what was going on. And I think we're,
A recommendation will be updated in time for the regular session.
yeah, okay, perfect. Thanks.
Questions for Jamie? Okay, moving on to the third item, the Owl Place sliding scale subdivision preliminary plat road waiver.
All right, so that is these two lots here, and they're wanting it to be 3 lots. This one have this one is also getting a little bit dinged for those street trees. It is unclear yet. We're still doing some information gathering. Again, the plat committee was just on Thursday, so we're trying to like get more information about their street trees. If they can count this like row down here, if they're outside the right of way, and then it looks like maybe 5 trees would be required here. I'm not sure if they're going to be requesting a street tree waiver yet or not. I'll have that updated by the next packet. And then they also had a road width waiver. This is what the plat looks like. Did have a very robust discussion again about access to lot one. Yeah, because the driveway is here and it will have to skirt around the sinkhole. This is 21 feet. Staff had made a recommendation, it should be a shared driveway. Staff packet, I'm not sure if it's changing yet or not. We're still information gathering on some things, so. That was all I have to say on that one. Oh, and there will be a correction to the traffic count. So this is something new. When we have a road width waiver, they're needing to do their average daily count and submit that to us to see if it qualifies for the waiver, in which case it looks like this one's going to, but there's an error in this and it will be updated.
Any questions for staff on this one? Moving on to the fourth item, North Park PUD outline plan amendment 6.
Yeah. So this is amendment number 6 to the entirety of the North Park PUD. This would include 46 parcels at a total of 470 acres, spanning multiple sections, including Township and Richland Township. This is a mass overhaul of the existing North Park PUD, which does include the creation of new districts, one of which would be the government center, and that would allow a new Monroe County Justice Facility. Does anybody have any questions on this one?
moving right along tonight, I'd say.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not sure if we can take these three high mark ones together.
Absolutely, could not it together, but I had to do separate reports. That's a little odd. There's gonna be updates to these reports, basically. The 4 county staff members, 5 county staff members met on site at Highland Park Estates this morning. Did a full walkthrough. We're kind of reviewing their as-built before. The outcome of that meeting is that basically they're gonna do their darndest to make corrections out there by August 25th of this summer. And hopefully like be able to get some acceptance. It's gonna take a lot of work with the neighbors out there because of driveway corrections. But yeah, we have a lot of the highway department out there today. Support the efforts, what's happening. I don't know if I have any other main highlights to this. We had seen it. We had been introduced to it back in January. But it's real. You guys were introduced to it back in January. And then we did approve Highland Park Estates Phase 5, which had a condition of approval. And which I have in the report. And there is supposed to be a written commitment eventually talking about when these get completed. So we're bringing this back again for performance period extension date, which is looking like it'll be August 25th, 2025.
Mr. Staff? Okay, if not, can we take items 8 and 9 with Freedom Field subdivision together? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, so Freeman Fields, an amazing thing happened and the transfer of ownership out here. Looks like we're gonna see some movement on getting this one completed. And looking like they're gonna be doing that in 2030. This is Jackie's report. It has got a lot of details in it. You might want to read it. I think it was in the newspaper recently as well. So this is just something to keep your eye on.
Is this the one by Eagle
Yes.
to the point?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep, off the Stray Bridge.
it's exciting.
Yes, very.
Been ready to go for a long time.
Yeah, it's been ready.
It's got, well,
Did you see the price point on the homes?
Yeah,
Not meant to be affordable.
happiness.
Are there flooding concerns there? Are there any?
it's high and dry. We're not sure like what their detention basins look like.
Oh.
Those need full as-built, might need correction.
Okay, got it. Because I imagine that something drawn up that long ago may
Oh,
no
that's
longer be
true.
accurate. So, okay,
That and our records aren't fully
okay,
like,
got it.
there's a whole lot of back history and a lot of back
Is
history.
there gonna be a problem with the line of credit?
And I think they put up a bond for,
Whatever they put up, is there gonna be a problem?
no. They reposted. I think it's good. They're, yeah, I'm just really wanting to make this go.
This,
Oh, for sure, yeah. And then I made a cheat sheet for the last thing from tonight. And there's more people here than I thought would be, so if you have them. Let me open it up. Packet part number 2.
Yeah.
All right,
We'll share one.
Yeah.
Basically, the new CDO got you guys pretty comfortable with like 500-page documents. You felt the meeting packets now need to be.
I'll leave it.
I mean, this is the entire CGO.
Oh, great.
I was in thanks.
Anybody want to talk to you? Yeah, okay.
So I'm just gonna throw, like, so these, I identified all of these are what I feel like are the highlights of, you're gonna see a lot of little like reference, like small little corrections throughout the CDO. A lot of it is just where our consultants made links to those things. And that
Yeah.
made it look a little sloppy.
Got it.
And I will also say that we're gonna try to, in the next packet, when you see this part two, I'm hoping that we have the CDO numbering matching the packet numbering. Right now, they're like 4 pages off, which was totally annoying. So if you're wanting to get a preview of all these text amendments, look at the CDO document number, not the PDF number. But I'm gonna try to get those linked up for the next packet. Page, is it gonna tell me 11 or 15?
Is this going to be loaded as a document under the CDO website? That would be the easiest thing. If like a red line version of this.
Yes, I mean, this is the red line version.
Right, of it, if it dropped into the CDO
Yeah.
website,
Mhm.
then
I don't envy you, is all I
No,
can say.
I-
This
it's
is
a lot.
really difficult and
Yeah.
when push comes to shove, these little tiny,
Yes.
alignments throughout, they can take forever.
So, this had been in there at one point and then it was gone and we added it back in so that anytime we make a revision, we can have a quick reference of what chapters were impacted. So this is coming back. We've added links on page 19. The 2-pagers look like a lot is happening and they're, Jackie worked really hard on the 2-pagers because a lot of the way our ordinance works, that if we have the main use table and our ordinance says that that's what rings true and that's what we would use. If there's a discrepancy, we use the big use table. We were finding some discrepancies in our 2-pagers. So this is cleaning up the 2-pagers to make it correspond to the use table. And then we also had, again, some of the like subscript, those little superscript numbers.
Yes.
We're not aligning, something happened and a lot got jobbed around. So that's what's going on with the 2-pagers. But it's always great to have a second set of eyes. They're your eyes. All your eyes.
Salute.
Can I interject real quick, Tammy? You said that if there's a mistake that the overarching document, the large scale one, is the dominant thing that you go by, not the 2-pagers.
The big use table.
Big use table, yeah.
Yes, the use.
Is that documented somewhere?
Yes, it is. And it is codified. It's codified in here.
Okay, that's why I'm asking, just because that's great if planning is operating that way, but also.
It's in there. Yeah,
Okay.
we made sure
That's
to
perfect.
have a safety in case there was a conflict. Sure. So,
Yeah, no,
so this is streamlining that.
perfect. Thank you.
I think you're.
I'm trying to do both, skipping around. No, this is the use table. Yeah, so the use table, we're gonna get all of these, the links are gonna be up here. And then this will be the reference number. So the main link to get to the section where standards are for the uses, that is happening. Page 88, we start seeing some, things that got basically relocated or alphabetized within the standards. So there wasn't any text change. It was just moving it around. Oh, this is interesting. We forgot 142. We forgot to add this language in. This is a pretty important one for people who own multiple lots. If they can't meet their setbacks, they can join those together for planning and zoning purposes. And it just somehow didn't make it in here and we fixed it. So we're adding that back in verbatim. See some format changes, chapter 18, adding definition labels. We had a Scrivener's error for the eco setback. It was it was showing up as two different things. So we went with the one that was actually intended to be. So page 253 of the packet, it's 200 feet from normal pool elevation for Lake Monroe and Lake Refuge. And then something, okay, and here's a bigger one that I would like for you guys to be reading. Because it's relevant to the two subdivisions that you guys heard this evening. We have a text amendment to the preservation of natural features and amenities. We just had, I didn't put my eyes on this one good enough for the street trees. But we have cleaned up the language here so that areas that are in more rural parts of our county are not required to put into street trees, but they could do instead a supplemental tree preservation area on their property.
Yeah.
It's what was there before. But we tried to clean up the language and then it got a little sloppy and it was unclear. And thanks to Anne for doing a lot of research for making it. And then residential sex accessory structure, we just through review of those, I think we're realizing they only need a plot plan, not a certified plot plan. So that's changing. We just changed two definitions that are mentioned in here. The planning director gets mentioned in different ways throughout the ordinance. So we're just including not all of them are included as planning director. And then, yeah. So those are, yeah, this little cheat sheet should help if you're wanting to go through and really like look into the nitty gritty of the ordinance changes that we're suggesting. But the main like text amendment probably is street trees, I would say. And then adding back. Well, impervious covers in a separate text amendment. Yeah. Yeah, we left it at its own thing because it might get, it's a little more complex. I want to give it some freedom to change or get delayed or re-reviewed by drainage board if needed. So, yes.
You have the 40-foot increment still left on the street tree thing. And
Yes.
previously we were 45 feet.
No, it was, well, so we've always had for commercial site plans that are developing, we've always had a 35-foot every 35 feet for commercial development. In the subdivision control ordinance, it was 40 feet. And so we brought back 40 feet from before because all the planners know it. We just know subdivisions, need one tree every 40 feet.
Okay. I'm just
Yeah.
bringing that up because
It's different.
That was my mistake of misremembering from plat committee, but we talked about 35 versus 40, so.
Yeah, it's in here where we did just strike the 35, I think. Where was it up here?
No, it was not mentioned here, but we can see the 40 feet in green.
Yeah.
So that is,
Yeah,
that will be
okay.
more consistent.
Okay, sorry, I remembered it's 35, 40, 45, not 35, 40. So. Oh,
And that's for both commercial and residential, 40-foot.
Yeah, for subdivisions.
but commercial will remain 35?
Yes. If they're, doing the development.
Okay.
To do street trees. Yeah.
Can I kind of pose a question? And I'm in my mind, I'm kind of utilizing administrative session for how I define it as administrative session, but on this topic, because we discussed this briefly at plat committee last week, so I spent the weekend meditating on this a little bit. Is there any, and most of you know, forestry is my specialty for trees, anytime it's trees, I really think about trees often. But is there any thought from Planning Commission as a whole about if this concept is being had in a rural setting where we're trading one street tree for one preservation tree of maybe an already forest setting? Is there any thoughts about instead of going one for one and doing a square footage computation or maybe even a decimal of an acreage computation where, and I'm thinking from a surveyor's perspective, where instead of saying, hey, I don't want to plant 25 trees along my street side, I instead, let's say it's a 20th of an acre. Instead of planting 20 trees, I'm preserving an acre of forest here. Or it's a 50th of an acre. That's just, I'm doing some forest inventory thoughts. I'm trying to come up with what would be an accurate definition for that. And I just visualize from a surveyor's perspective, it'd be easier than you're delineating this forest pocket as opposed to going out and finding those particular trees. And then I think of it secondly, a lot of times we see these preservation aspects being done on slopes and drainage concepts. And I would much rather see a preservation of this whole drainage bowl or this slope as opposed to these 4 trees on this slope. So I don't know, I'm kind of opening it up for discussion.
Generally, I can see what you're saying. I think my concern with any of this, whether it be 1-for-1 or area based, which I can see why that would make more sense, is ensuring that there's some sort of conservation easement placed over that area, but we have no mechanism for checking except overhead,
Right.
you know, our aerial photos a year later. We take the best guess as to whether something, sure, so that's the concern, is that we don't lose an easement. But I don't know how we even patrol that, which I don't think we can.
And that was actually, I guess I didn't mention that too. That is a thought that I also had about from the patrolling it. And I'm going to say, desk chair, armchair patrolling it. You could patrol area via ortho images.
Yeah.
By, and can quickly measure and get an idea. Oh yeah, according to the ortho image, it looks like this canopy still exists, but you can't count individual trees.
Right.
And then beyond that, I have a section of my yard, I'm only on an acre, I have a section of the yard that's so thick with maple trees that I could consider that, I could say there's 10 trees there, but it's only 10 square feet, So, how are you defining I am also seeing from the environmental benefits that the street tree provides, from the water aspects and the air quality aspects, is if we put a square footage on that, we're really preserving, we have dense forest, we have sparse forest, so.
Yeah. And while I do see value in street trees, I don't see value in street trees in rural areas because they cause, much more infrastructure damage.
Oh.
And,
And that's not the character. I mean, that's the primary consideration, that my novice way of looking at it is when you're out driving in the countryside, not having trees enables you to see traffic around the corner, so to speak. I don't think the county should be looking like a municipality with street-lined roadways. I just don't. Now, that doesn't hold true, of course, if there's a junkyard there or a portable toilet business, for example, that some screening needs to be done for that. But street trees along country roads doesn't seem like that is an efficient. I think it's a burden to property owners and to businesses. But that's just my novice way of thinking about it. I like what you said about that area. I know I have a wooded area that's undergone some radical deforestation because of the emerald ash borer, but still that forest area is something that I have a goal to repopulate, but I don't have street trees along,
It's the purpose, because you brought up canopy. So it's purpose. So what is it, the canopy? I mean, is it the type of tree that provides the canopy versus, when I think street trees, I think, ornamental type trees, right? I mean, is it volume of the canopy that has your attention there?
Yes, by larger volume canopies, you're getting larger environmental benefits from the, granted, one of the biggest impacts, and we talked about this briefly, Platt, is that, from an urban standpoint, the street tree helps negate some of your heat sink components of the roadways. And there's added values that we're not losing by removing them from the roadside itself. However, in the urban area, I think you already have so many other, oftentimes you already have natural tree lines being created. So for me, it's more of like, we have this opportunity of, rather than just nominally saying 10 for 10 trees, preserving and conservationally sticking to a forest setting or a group of land as opposed to just saying 10 individual
And
trees.
that's where I was going. Is it the volume of the canopy or is it a number of trees that are smaller, that are, I mean, if it's about the canopy, it's one thing. If it's about the root system holding the slope there, it's a different question, which might, indicate why we want certain trees in certain places for slope retention, right? Things growing.
And that's what mentally I was trying to come up with what is a valuable number. And I was doing some various, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Green-Grid stocking chart, but there's using basal area and comparing it to trees per acre and trying to figure out what is the optimal growth curve for these trees where we would sit at across the landscape on an average, what is our optimal environmental benefit that we're yielding based on the acreage we're preserving in comparison to one street tree. So that's where I was trying to, but I also didn't want to keep going down and spend hours coming up with these numbers and then pose it to you guys. You're like, no, we've like one for one.
You know what, we do it.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking us into the leads. Yeah, as I think about our storms that are coming in and how many of those are lying across rural roads tomorrow evening. I see the point there.
As long as it's easy for staff to calculate, I think that's the key, is like coming up with something that just makes sense, that's, a no-brainer, that property owners can understand, that staff can easily, look at an aerial and go, yep, we'll call this easement, whatever. And, as long as it's that, I mean, I know that it's, the calculations you're thinking of are very well thought out in terms of what do they contribute, how do they help, right? But for the layperson, for the resident, and even just for staff, for being able to do this quickly, we just need an easy way to translate that.
Well, and that's why my thought was that if you're not, one tree can't equal X square footage. And that is that is the variable that is put in the packet. But this has to be delineated on the plat anyhow. So the layperson is already required to be working with a surveyor, unless they're a surveyor themselves, I guess, that to delineate this in the plat. And so in my mind, this is also making the surveyor's job easier when we have, whoever the surveyor sitting here, you tell them, okay, well, you were required to have 10 trees here, but now instead you need this much acreage set aside. The surveyor can. Well, then kind of basing off the judgment of the room, I may go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
I may go ahead and just put some stuff that I had already started working together, and maybe I'll try and work with Tammy and we can edit the packet for 2 weeks from now, and you guys can.
1 week.
1 week. Oh, shoot.
So we got to publish a packet, so.
Okay, so before the end of the week, I will get with you, Tammy. But,
Tuesday.
okay.
But my only guidance is keep it simpler.
Yeah.
Don't make it so complicated. Now this goes, my head's hurting on what you're trying to explain.
Right.
I agree with what you just said, and I think we had this discussion during plat, and I totally support the idea of having a quick conversion. I was thinking about this over the weekend, and my particular property, if I were to replace street trees, they have to be out of the right of way, which means it puts it in my front pastures. And so every 35 to 45 feet, I'd be planting a tree along there and you end up with a bunch of row of trees that's going to adversely impact the growth of the pasture land. And yet what I did long before any of this was I wanted to kind of restore some benefit to the areas along the West Fork of Clear Creek where it runs through the north side of my property. So I essentially built a riparian reserve down there and planted lower growth canopy trees and understory trees and such. And it ended up being about 2 acres out of the 17 acres total. So I get what you're saying, and I think it makes perfect sense for people who don't necessarily want to have trees out in the front of their property off the right of way in their yard or the pasture or whatever. Then they can dedicate an aerial a number of
Acres
or
square feet, whatever.
or units, divisions of an acre that would be a quick conversion that you could say, okay, this is going to be the reserve from now on, and that could be your conservation set aside, so to speak.
Sounds.
Okay.
We're not Napoleon.
I will, I'll,
Make an appointment.
Yeah.
Flesh it out.
it'll be fun to try to find a time for that, but no.
Not Friday.
Okay, thank you, Edward, for bringing those thoughts forward.
Sure.
A lot of good ideas there. So any other questions on any of the other potential CBO revisions?
Just excited about that because that, I know that some property owners were really burdened by some of the street trees, and this really goes a long way to solving it. I think that's great.
Hopefully.
Can I get a consensus? This is for the rural areas. We have a whole set of criteria still.
Subdivisions.
If you're next to one of our greenways.
Right.
And the urbanizing,
Yeah,
you know.
right.
Yeah, this is just rural.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's our last agenda item. Anything else to report?
Scorch.
Wow.
No, I think that's it, just unless you want to like, you know, crash Jackie's, Citizens Academy. Not until 8:00. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to show up till 8:00 then, right? Or did you show up?
8 to 9. He's gonna, he showed up at 7:30. And watch the highway department.
Okay, do we have a motion for adjournment? Everybody?
It's